Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Fleet Playbook 2026, New VMRS Standards and Predictive Scheduling with Smarter Tech. My name is Alex Percy. I'm a contributing editor for Fleet Equipment Magazine and the moderator for this event. Today's webinar is sponsored by AMCS. This session explores how proactive tech-enabled maintenance strategies are delivering measurable ROI, and how you can get your fleet ready for the rollout of Code Key 25, the newest VMRS standard, which is built to support predictive OEM-driven service instructions. Before we get started, I'd like to address some housekeeping items for the webinar. As part of this webinar, we will have a live Q&A session. We are going to address some questions during the last portion of the event. But if you want to improve your chances of your question being answered, don't wait until the end of the event to submit them. You can ask them as you think of them, and you could do that by typing your question into the Ask a Question box and then clicking Submit. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on demand for you to view, and we encourage you to direct anyone who might be interested to the recorded presentation. Tomorrow, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording, and it will be available on the Fleet Equipment website. Take a look at the webinar software. You have the ability to open, close, and resize different elements on your screen. To make a window smaller or larger, grab a corner of the window and drag it. You can also make some windows full screen by clicking Maximize, which is in the upper right corner of the window. If you want to receive a certificate of attendance, click on the graduation hat icon with the black toolbar on the left side of your computer screen. In that same toolbar, you'll find icons to share the webinar by email or on social media. If you're viewing from a mobile device, you may need to click the 4 dots menu in the upper right corner of your screen to view the different icons. Your feedback helps make our events better. Please click the survey icon to leave your comments about today's topic and presenters. The survey will also appear in the middle of your screen towards the end of the event. If you need help at any point during the webinar, send us a message through the Ask a Question box. And finally, if the slides stop advancing or if you're having problems hearing the audio, try pressing the F5 key at the top of your keyboard or Command R if you're on a Mac, and that will refresh the webinar console on your screen. All right, so with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Our first speaker is John Davis. John has worked in the fleet maintenance industry since 1983 and joined Dossier Systems, later acquired by AMCS in 2005. He is responsible for the Fleet Management Consulting Group, which is an in-house group of former fleet managers who help AMCS fleet maintenance customers implement best practices and fleet management software. John's team also helps users who want to improve their use of the software or get their operations to the next level. While most of his time is spent in the field working with customers, John also works closely with the AMCS transport product and development teams to bring the daily real-world user perspective to the product. Our other speaker is Maggie Laird, Fleet Management Consultant for the AMCS Group. As an award-winning fleet management expert and author of many industry articles and blogs, Maggie has impacted more than 500 transportation companies across North America. She currently shares her knowledge with customers at AMCS and Dossier Systems. A dynamic speaker, implementation specialist, and consultant with more than 49 years of experience, Laird helps fleet organizations streamline maintenance operations and prioritize and sustain strategic goals while using the latest technologies. Her work has been recognized throughout the industry as she is presented at industry-leading events such as Women in Trucking, Fleet and System conferences. With the introductions out of the way, let's get the presentation started. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex. So today I thought we'd take a dive into a couple areas that are brand new. It's going to be exciting. I think it's one of the biggest change I've seen without being dramatic. It's one of the biggest change I've seen in the 43 years I've been doing this. So we'll get there shortly. So our agenda is what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 2025. Would we see the new VMRS codes, which it was an enormous team that worked on it. It was over 75 people for 3 years worked on this between manufacturers and vendors and software. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. What's going to happen in 2026? We don't know all the answers, but we know a few things. And we're going to be talking about turning telematics into real-time data, right? The telematics have been around a long time now, but new and exciting things are happening in that space. And then looking ahead to the 2027 model year trucks, which will be the first to start adopting the new VMRS codes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I just wanted to talk to you about one of the most surprising things that I've seen in quite a while. And the reason I want to bring that up is we've been in this industry a long time, and I have never seen the rare relief that we've seen in the last year. The average repair cost surge for 2024 is a rare relief because maintenance costs dipped, even though we have increased utilization. Even with the newer vehicles, the newer your vehicles, the better you have in maintenance. The costs are down on new ones. So if they have increased utilization on the old ones, they still were able to bring this up to speed. And there was about a 2% from 23 to 24 reduction, and that's massive in the world of fleet. John, did you have anything else you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, and when I saw that statistic, I was like, well, where is that coming from? And I sat in a session at the TMC, at the American Trucking Association, at our meeting, and I was thinking, what's driving it? So when we dug into that, what we found out was that there had been this backlog of new equipment that had been ordered after 2020. People were ordering and ordering. Well, they weren't getting delivered, but they started getting delivered in 23. 24, and the average fleet age decreased. Not a lot, I don't know I think it was like a half a year or something like that, but it's significant enough that it changed the way that the cost. We weren't having to repair as many of the older vehicles. I don't know if that's going to hold. We'll have to see. We see all the numbers about how many new vehicles are brought in, new assets, whatever, but it was something, as Maggie said, we haven't seen that, and it was very surprising to see that happen.
Approximately 30% of the commercial vehicles that are inspected each year result in a compliance violation of fines and operational downtime. The fines can be up to $10,000 per violation. That's incredibly crazy dollars in any fleet. And of that, one of the things that we need to remember is the impact that they can have on your drivers, on your rates that you pay for your CSA and your insurance. And, there's pre and post trip inspections. Are we doing them so we catch this? And are we then looking at it predictively? So those two slides sort of go back and forth together. And so I wanted to ask John what he thinks about are they using their computer systems to even track this? If you've got 30% of what is being inspected. Now, the other side of that is, why is it only 30% that are actually being inspected? So John, you want to talk about that too?
Yeah. So what I had traditionally looked at, and this came from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So what we looked at previously was, I had personally kind of focused on the out of service. And when we're going in to help a fleet, like when you get a roadside inspection, what's your out of service? But the reality is, and that's the most severe, right? I mean, you're done, right? And I look at how many are drivers. Well, it's not in fleet maintenance. We don't generally have control over the drivers, but we are responsible for the equipment. So I usually look at it on the equipment side. How much stuff came through an inspection and they placed it out of service? And you know how expensive that is. You have to deal with all of that. But when we looked at it this way, so that means that 30 out of every 100 that come across their inspection have something that they're writing up, something that they're failing. And of course, all that's public information that you can get at, right? This is the one that really kind of blew my mind. Remember, it's a combination of stuff that's out of service. Maybe it has to be towed. They know they got you on the side of the road if something's broken or whatever. So the costs are always high. They're generally not at the most opportune time. But $10,000 more, I thought, wow, that's really very, very significant. And it gets me to thinking, are they even tracking that so that they know, as Maggie said, post trip, right? I mean, we all are working together. The drivers are out there running every day, and if they don't help us out and tell us something's wrong, they might be running with that problem, and then it comes back and it reflects poorly upon our fleet maintenance operations because we had no idea, right? We didn't have any idea that something was wrong. Therefore, we weren't given the opportunity to correct that and fix that. And it's very expensive. But if you can track that, you can say, okay, this was a statutory reason that it came in. Those are all VMRS codes, so you can go and you can say it was the result of a roadside inspection. Fine. We got it. We see that actual coming in, and we could say, okay, we did this many dollars of repairs, not even to mention fines and things like that typically are charged to the operation, but it cost us this much because these things failed on roadside. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blame it all on drivers. That's not fair, right? Some of it is people not doing everything right on an inspection, and that's an opportunity for us to go back and look and say, are we doing our APM or a BPM or whatever, 10,000 miles? Are we really doing those correctly? So you have to take a close look at what's causing that. But still, it was a number that was surprising to me, just based on that many are coming across, with some type of.
John, can you go back just for a minute?
Sure.
Thank you. There's one other piece that you need to think about is the disruption to as a carrier to get your products where they need to go. So doing your preventive and predictive maintenance on time is going to save you that disruption as well. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to cough. The top fleets are having to stop chasing. Try that again. Top fleets stop chasing growth, and they're chasing efficiency. What we mean by that is there's got to be a turning point for fleet maintenance. We need to quit batch entering things after the fact and look at past and start looking at what's happening now and future so that we can make better decisions. So there's more mobile tools, there's new VMRS codes and how that's going to work to make increased precision. And the diagnostic intelligence is going to be great. It's going to put this in the hands of the mechanics when they need it, not days after they've completed the repairs. John, do you want to take that?
Yeah, and the mobile, so all the products that are out there, ours included, right, have some sort of a mobile feature. Our predecessor company, Galaxy Systems, we had available invention back in 2004. Think about that. No iPhone, no Android. Think of what we had to build that on. We had to build that on, and we had to build it on Windows Mobile. We built it on the simple units, but it worked, right? It did what it needed to do. Ran through the web. It was slow back then because that's a long time ago in this world. Fast forward to now, the products are really built to be mobile first, and then of course you can run in a browser, right? The mobile should be able to do everything. The people that the average technician, this was a number that really shocked me. We were working with a company not long ago, and they said, okay, I said, how many technicians you have? They said 2,500 across the country. And I didn't get the exact number, but like 48, 49% of their technicians were 29 years and younger. Think about that. They've had a cell phone or a mobile device almost their entire life. So that's their expectation. Well, we implemented a very, very large waste company over a couple of years ago. And they had the most dramatic that I had ever seen. They went from their calculations, not ours. This was from them. They went from 30 minutes average writing up a work order per task on paper and filing it to 30 seconds. To me, that's a little bit, 30 seconds is pretty fast. I'd like to say, yeah, we could exactly do it, but they were very confident in that number. They sat there and they studied that number and how quickly their people could record that information. And you're putting that tool in the technician and mechanic's hands. They can see the repair histories. They can see what's been done. They can see everything real time. So idea of that is that they're also much more likely to give us good quality data because they're the ones that are going to see the data when they've got to bring that truck back in, right? We'll get further along in the new VMRS here in just a moment, and the in the diagnostics. Okay, do you have anything else on that, Maggie?
I do. I want to remind people that we invest heavily in new vehicles, in the different technologies they have, and we need to invest in the mobile tools that we have. That's a new technology that some of us are, as John said, very comfortable with, and some are not. But it is another tool in their toolbox. And every mechanic should be able to have that as a mobile tool so that they can work smarter and more efficiently and see what they need to know so they can diagnose things better. That's what I'd have to add to that, John.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to lead into this for just a minute. And I know that John spent 3 years. He also working on this project, he and some of our other team members of the 75 people he was talking about before. But I really think that we want to discuss what this really does. And, you know, we've all had preventive maintenance programs, or should have, all these years, but they were based on different kinds of things. They were based on miles or hours. Then we looked at days. Then we looked at fuel consumption. But it was all what happened and where are we going to go with that. We weren't really looking at predictive and prognostic maintenance. And so looking at the changes that are coming out and how that may change, how that will allow us to see things better is what we need to do. And a lot of what we have on our checklist will change. So with that, John, why don't you delve into this since you spent the 3 years on the project?
Yeah. And I have to tell you, you'll see a little further here in just a couple of moments, the likes of the people that worked on this. We had really high quality companies, vehicle manufacturers, engine manufacturers. And one of our competitors is the only other one that participated in this. But in the spirit of this, we were all working together. We're all part of the TMC. And I compliment the work that people were able to do, to get all of these different people, when you see it lined up and say, yes, we will agree on this because it's going to do something better. So what this is, as Maggie said, you know, think about an oil change, right? There's 5 areas that they're really starting with, and we'll talk about that a little more in depth, but think of it, they're going to talk about oil changes, filter, diesel particulate filter, transmission filters, air filters, things that they can sense when it needs to be done. And it's not just based on some of the elementary things. I always go back to my famous BMW, right? They've been doing an oil change by 600 gallons of fuel for 30 years, right? That's when they tell you to change it. And it varies based on how you operate the vehicle. Caterpillar, same thing, right? On the yellow iron, right? They're doing it by fuel consumption. That's not what this is. This is where the engine manufacturers, they will use their own algorithms and their own processes to figure out when it's time to do something. Air filter is easy, right? Restriction, it gets to this point, it's time to do something. Transmission, same thing. Restriction on that filter, you know, it's time to do something. Diesel particulate, same thing. They've got sensors for all that. We don't really know how they're going to do that, right? I myself, when I see some of them this spring at the TMC, I'm going to see if any of the engineers can give us any answers, but it doesn't matter. Cummins may do it one way. Volvo may do it a different way. Caterpillar may do it a different way. It doesn't matter. They're going to be telling us that it's time to do something. It's coming due, then it's due, then it's overdue. So you're not going to have to arbitrarily schedule things. And we'll have an example of that in just a little bit. And they also can sense when something is a little bit out of range, right? You know, we don't normally broadcast diagnostic trouble codes for things that are pending, right? Because my goodness, you can barely keep up with stuff that's confirmed or permanent, right? But they can start seeing that trend and know, okay, this doser on the fluid is, you know, exhaust fluid is, it's almost done, and let you deal with that as opposed to waiting for the failure. So that's what they're really trying to use. You know, the predictive word has been a little bit overused sometimes because something's happened. They're saying we're going to predict it. Well, this is a little further towards real prediction based on what they know, you know, with their connected systems. So with that, there's a new set of codes, and they are code key 25. They have been added in it. It's the first time I've been doing this a long time. It's the first time since 2000 that TMC has brought these type into this area, and that's what they decided would be best. I'm going to show you in a moment. You'll be able to see right here. You can see the codes, for instance, under engine, so 045, that's the power plant code, right? You're now going to see letter codes and things that say change the oil and filter. And the language is the same. And that's what was so hard to get everybody to agree to, right? So they are new assembly codes. There's 250 some, I think that's I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's about that they've developed across areas that they feel like we can focus on. That'll be ever changing forever, right? But the first places are starting, like one of the manufacturers out there is starting with their 2027 model years, and they're starting in one very simple place: when to change the oil and filter. And that's the first thing that they're going to roll out, and then they'll incrementally roll out things more year by year. So they're just, and for a product like ours, we leave them suppressed until people are ready to use them, but they are out there ready to use now. And if you think about it, it takes a bit to get there, right? Because the software companies have to have it first. The truck manufacturers and engine manufacturers have to put those in their computers. And then lastly, the telematics people have to send us that information, because you don't just want an email. Most people are probably very overwhelmed, by email. I know I get that way. So what does it mean for us, right? It means a few things, right? The scheduling is much more precise. You're not doing something late or early, and they'll set the boundaries so that you'll know stuff is coming due. So you're not just changing an example of the oil just because it got to 30,000 miles or it got to 900 hours or whatever your process is. It's that truck telling you. And because these are new trucks, as long as you're following that, you'll be within the warranty guidelines. Now, I still think, you personally, doing this a long time, I still think that oil analysis is a proper thing to do. And hopefully that's, integrated with your fleet maintenance system to make that easy. It's another thing, can be very overwhelming as well with emails, but if it's all integrated, it makes it very easy to be able to use those in conjunction. So I think there's still very, very much a place for that, but this being the first. And then there's no real unplanned downtime. So think of like a sensor that they're telling you needs to be changed, because they know that sensor is getting ready to fail. They know it's reaching the end of its life. You can have it in stock. You can plan when you're going to do it, and you won't have anything offline unexpectedly. We also have a big savings with it. It's a little less, but everybody deals with it these days, right? We're not unnecessarily having to change the oil. So we're not having to, refine it, process it, ship it, use it, dispose of it, all that sort of things, right? Same thing for the oil filters and all the disposals. So we're reducing the carbon footprint just by using less of that. And that's very important to people, and what's not going in landfill. I mean, that's, the circular economy is very important to us globally. And what are we doing to be very good in that space and to give our customers a tool? This project was very near and dear to my heart because it lines up to that, which is what the company is all about. But also, I live in Virginia. I live on the Chesapeake Bay, and I want clean air and I want clean water, and this just helps to go forward there. And it's an easy thing to do. That's going to it will make a difference. It's going to really change the way that we do things, and it's data driven. It's not just some arbitrary piece. So I feel like here are the folks that worked on it, and I think my hat's off to them, right? And we had Ryder, Werner, Penske, Packley's Ideal Lease, from fleets represented, and the OEM. We had International and IC Buck, Freightliner, Western Star, Peterbilt, Kenworth, Mack, Volvo. And it's leaving off in this slide, but we also had Cummins in Detroit. We had a huge representation of people that rolled up their sleeves and put their egos aside and worked on this. And it was they did a wonderful job. And we participated just from a software company to say, yes, this coding structure is going to work with your existing stuff, because the TMC is not a software company. So what does this mean? Where are we? So we got the code officially in March of this year, March of what? Back up. We got the codes in March of 25 because it takes a while to get things through the TMC. We as AMCS got them into our product in the 2025 later half of the year into one of our releases, and other software. I know of at least one that might do it, but that was the only one that participated, right? So they've got to learn it, they've got to deal with it and all, but it's there, right? You got to have it there. Well, you could say that's great. Okay, fine, I can use it. But if the trucks aren't telling me, then nothing's going to happen. Well, good news. They are starting to put it in there. They couldn't get it in their 2026 model years because all the engineering was already done before they had the codes. But it is coming in some 2027 model year trucks. So this isn't something that's going to be overnight. It's going to take years and years to get there, and it will become more mature as it goes. But being aware that it is there and that it is going to, I think it's created so that anything they can measure and give us advice on or give us notification that something needs to be done, it's really going to change the way that we do things based on how we use a piece of equipment. You have the exact same truck, let's say, and you run it in, Michigan, and it has a much different duty cycle than it may have in, say, Central Florida or something, same spec, and it just needs, this will know, it will know what to do. So the telematics obviously are the conduit from the truck to us.
So what we wanted to do here is talk a little bit more about the telematics code 25 with use case. And so I'm going to start with the engine oil. The old method, like we talked about, was manually tracking based on miles, hours, and fuel consumption. What happened yesterday? When do we want to look at it? If we didn't get good mileage information in, if we didn't get fuel consumption in, then we didn't have any way to predict those. And if that was coming in and it wasn't proper, then that skewed when we were going to do the maintenance. With code 25, maintenance 045, and John was talking about the new assembly codes that started with letters. So A02 will say replace is the replacement alert that will come in, and it's advance notice for coming due, and overdue, just like we currently have in our product. Now, the other side of that is it will then trigger a work request so that you already know this is coming due and that it came directly from the truck and not waiting on any of the old methods. John, you want to talk about the exhaust system?
Sure. So same type thing, right? The old method is you did it on miles or hours or fuel, right? Or you just waited for the light to come on, whatever, whatever. And I don't mean that jokingly, but that's some fleets do it that way, right? Okay, fine. Especially for fleets that the truck comes back every day, they can manage it that way, right? But now it's going to tell us that, it needs to be serviced, right? So sometimes some of these codes are just something needs to be inspected. They're getting a weird signal, they're getting something strange, and it's off, right? Instead of just throwing the check engine light on, and it may not need a check engine, but hey, it's like, you need to check this. You need to do an inspection. Our voltage is off on this alternator or whatever. It's the variable ones. It's very hard, right? They have to do their determination of saying it's not varying correctly. It's stuck in one mode or the other or something like that, whatever it might be. In the case of the exhaust, right, they're monitoring it and they're saying, okay, it's time to do whatever this is. Just say maybe it's a sensor, right? And before we ever have to turn the check engine light on, you could have a work request, hopefully be able to watch that. And maybe when you've got the piece of equipment in, say, you know what, we got a ticket that came in from the truck here that said, you need to look at this, right? And the other part that's very nice about that is, you're still probably going to plug in the laptop and scan it and see what's going on, but you at least have an awareness of things that you need to look at going into that scheduled service.
Proactive maintenance can expand the lifespan of fleet vehicles up to 50%. Amazing thought that now we have vehicles that we're buying, and because in 2027 and beyond, and that we can look at the proactive maintenance. Maybe our life cycles that we have will extend. We'll be able to look at less costs because we're catching things in advance. So all the things that we think about in the old preventive maintenance, or even manually trying to predict, now we've got proactive maintenance coming in from the trucks themselves, from the sensors. And so this is going to help us save the expand the life cycle, save money, and help us go from here forward in managing our fleets. Big investments, if it can save us that kind of lifespan, that would be great. John, do you want to talk a little more about that? I'm just surprised at this number.
Yeah, well, that was me too. Yeah, and that was the thing. I was like, wow, 50%. I mean, so, as they said in the introduction, it does make me feel a little vintage there, right? But I've been doing this a long time. 1983, I grew up in the mass transit industry. I've always had a computerized system my whole career, and I've whatever it might be. So it kind of comes to me and says, well, you know what? And I feel like we were as proactive as we could be, in doing maintenance. I'm not saying things were always perfect, but we did the best we could with that. But the more proactive you are, I mean, extending the lifespan to up to 50% if you want. Sometimes you don't want to, right? Because, I've got the capital budget. Our old stuff is worth stuff if we can get a trade or sell it or whatever, and we want to do it. But also, if that's still the case, the equipment is worth more because it's been properly maintained, right? It's not just that that you can make it run longer, which is great, right? But also that the value of the asset is better, right? And everybody's going to be happier if equipment is running right. So the more proactive you can be. I did a webinar. I was invited to do one. My goodness, it's been probably 5 or 6 years now. And it was talking about doing stuff before it failed. So for a while, for 20 years ago, we were going down this hole where they were just waiting for the stuff to fail. They didn't bother to change something. And I don't mean things like oil and oil filters, but I mean like, okay, the starter. We know exactly, there's an averages on how long a starter is going to go based on the type of operation that you run. Is it local? Is it long distance? Is it urban transit? Is it construction? Whatever it might be, right? There's standards. So you get close to it and you say, okay, well, guess what? Now we're not even going to have to do it based on those averages and standards. We're going to be able to do it because it knows that it's drawing too many amps. There's still going to be some failures, right? But it will know that it's having a problem and it's trying to do something, right? And that's proactive. And we're going to stop whatever the problem is. Tow bills have gotten just crazy. I see, it just blows my mind, but I understand it, right? Who wants to be crawling around doing that? It's a hard job. I've done it. It's tough. So anyway, Maggie, what do you think about where we've evolved? You've been doing this a number of decades as well. So you've seen a lot of changes.
I think we've evolved, like you said, in a lot of ways, and I've watched it for a long time also. But where I think it has really revolved is we've got tech platforms that we're being able to see. We've got diagnostics, we've got AI, we've got automated onboard coming. And one of the things is I just spoke at Women in Trucking. There were 2,000 people, 3,000 people there. And we were talking about how maintenance has evolved. And one of the things that we talked about is there is a shift. There is a real shift of we're not going to just kick the tire. Some of you know what I'm talking about, and see if it broke, then we'll fix it. But there's no longer just mechanical alone. It's digital and data-driven. And the software integrates, and we've got mobile applications, and we have all sorts of things telling us information. And there has to be a shift that we start picking up that information and doing something with that. And the complexity of the trucks and the yellow iron is increasing with more sensors and driver assist tools. We have driver assist tools now that tell us things, and this is now our time, maintenance guys. This is just our time to start using this and do that. And the mechanic's role, oh my goodness, is shifting. It's going from data interpretation and into diagnostics, and them being able to figure out what's wrong, do what they need to do, and not spend the time going and having to diagnose. This new projection for 2027 trucks, this whole new direction is just exactly what I said. Maintenance has evolved, and so has the data that powers it. We need to embrace it. Young mechanics are embracing technology. It's time that we embrace it in all areas of maintenance. That's what I got, John.
We've worked at side by side a lot of years in the shops and things with customers. And one of the things, there are some people out there that will still to this day say, "Oh, my older techs can't get it." Don't buy it. They can't, because I always go, and I didn't invent this. One of my coworkers did, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna steal your idea." He went up and he said, "You got a phone?" And they said, "Yeah, I got a phone." And he said, "Well, okay, you can work this. If you can work your phone, you can work this app and make it function." And they get the confidence. You think about it, right? The older ones have more wisdom, have seen stuff, and can help some of the younger ones through. The younger ones, they're there to help too. If there's some technology and they say, "Oh, I forgot exactly quite how to do this." Hopefully it's intuitive enough that you won't have to do that. But and I'm not a person that says, "Oh, the sky is always blue." That's not the case, but it does work out, and all of them can do it. And we've had a major shift. 30 years ago, every software product was designed for technician or mechanics writing something down on a piece of paper, and a clerk, a data entry clerk, is interpreting that and keying it in so that we can gather statistics to be able to, what's our cost per mile, what's our cost per hour, when are things due, what have we done to it, all that, right? Around 2005, that started changing, where companies were saying, "Yeah, I'm going to put my technicians and mechanics on the system because of the real time." And then fast forward, let's go 5 years ago, right? It's really shifted the other way, where technicians and mechanics are expecting to put something into a phone, tablet. And honestly, I thought it was going to be tablets. It's a phone. It's what they want. They're used to having a phone in their hand, and they'll even deal with a smaller screen. We don't care at our company. We'll deal with whatever product they want to use. But I called that one wrong. I thought it would be tablets, and it's clearly the phones, because that's what they use every day in their personal life, and they're very good at it. So I think the fact that one big customer just recently told us they studied it because it was a huge savings for them. It far exceeded what our sales organization thought would happen. But going from 20 minutes down to 30 seconds to record what all they did, to me, that's immense, right? I don't know if they were just, I don't know how it got that good, but I'm very happy that they were able to do that. And I think that's massive progress. And you think about it, the technicians and mechanics are precious commodities to us today. Good people have always been difficult. It's even more challenging today. And, if we can save 10, 15 minutes many times during the day, then we've made their life easier, but we've also increased productivity and what they're able to accomplish.
One other thought on that is, having started my career as a shop clerk, trying to read what a mechanic wrote down. You would have thought they were a doctor writing prescriptions. They would put all this stuff down. Now with the mobile technology and the phones, they can just hit the microphone button and type it in. Now, somebody still needs to review that, because they might have typed something or spoke something in that you really don't want it in there. But it does save a lot of time. And talking with the customer that John was referring to, that's part of it. They didn't have to write it down and then have somebody transcribe it and enter it. Or even if they were trying to sit and type it in, some of the mechanics have bigger hands. And so trying to type all those little things and knowing how to spell it, and it got little red lines under it, that just frustrated them. So now we've taken that technology and they can just speak that technology. And our product, you can speak it in English or in French or in Spanish at this point. So we have companies using all of them. And so that's a great tool. And again, that's just technology moving us forward on the shop floor. There you go, John.
This one came from the Aberdeen group and we did some research. I'm like, oh, really? Where'd you find this? I'm very interested in this, right? So I dug into it and I said, 300% ROI. That sounds awful salesy to me. I didn't come from the sales side. I came from the shop operations and worked my way through that over the years. And but it's true. The numbers are real that they're giving, right? Now, when do you get to that ROI? So the most expensive part about an implementation is the investment that a company's going to put in it on their labor and their disruption. It is a disruption because you're implementing something new. Good professional services people, right? Like, I'm very proud of my team. We're some of I really do have the best of the best. I have half of my people have come from a competitor because we're a good place to work for them. And I try to make sure that people are treated as I want to be treated. So we have a phenomenal team. All of them have over 20 years experience. That is their requirement to come to work here. Having that person, no, they're not cheap, right? There's a cost, but it's worth every cent, because what they can do is they can look at your business and they can say, yeah, I know how that should be done. Not to tell you how to run your business, because that's your decision. You're going to tell us what you're trying to accomplish. And then we're going to say, okay, yeah, I've done this. I mean, our folks are at 30 customer sites a year, and they do it year in and year out. My newest person's just been here 7 years. That's the least seniority I have in the group, right? So we get really quality people to go out there and really help and take an interest. And they're not just reading something. They know the product. They know all the different verticals that we serve. We serve everything but aircraft in the sky. We do tons of ground equipment with aircraft, just not the stuff that's flying, right? Outside of that, we do it all. We had, when I dug into this, I'm like, really? So we had a customer study done, really wonderful study that they did for us. And they dug into the numbers, and they experienced a 430% ROI after 2 years of running, even including all of their own overhead, all of their own change management, all their own stuff in the software. So it is real, right? That's not that it. I would have loved to have been able to use that number, but the Aberdeen group did give us that number, and that's a true number. So even if you're on an older or legacy system, there may be still increased ROI on whatever you're doing, whatever you want to implement based on it. It's just a newer system. It's more modern. I mean, we've been doing this 47 years, hard to believe, right? In a software solution, and things have changed, and they're constantly going to change. So something to consider. So Maggie, we got just about finished here, but we got a pile of questions piled up on us, I can see. So we'll,
right. You want to start, Johnny, or you want me to start?
I'll let you go ahead and start here.
Okay, so what we want to do is, when we can be predictive and proactive, then we can get ahead of compliance issues. We know what's coming. We can make sure we have them. The system will tell us things, and compliance costs a lot. If you look at and track through your fleet systems how much you're spending on repairs due to compliance. We have that in the VMRS codes. TMC made sure of that years ago, and so we really need to look at that. And then you need to get ahead of your data management. And when I say that, I'm talking about real time, putting the data into the system, capturing it, so that what you end up with is data moving forward instead of what we did 20 years ago. We have all sorts of pieces of data that we need to manage. And so it crosses all avenues of your assets and of your accounting systems, your risk management systems. We just have to get ahead of it and not work on old data. The worst thing we can do is use old data to make new decisions. We need to have new data. And so that's what I think on when I say get ahead of data management. We just need to use the tools we have to tell us what's happening right now, that then we can make good decisions and get those ROIs that John was talking about.
Yeah, and I think with what we're going to see, to be easier to collect data, try to reduce our downtime, The running the fleet, it's got all kinds of things associated with it, right? As far as their downtime, right? It's not just the truck sitting on the side of the road and it's down, right? It's also brand reputation damage, right? It's refunds. Like if you're in the waste and recycling business and you're picking up somebody's trash and you can't get somebody else to cover it, you might have to refund them for a missed pickup. The milk doesn't get to the store. I mean, we're headed for a pretty big snowstorm across most of the US right now, and you want that to get there, or maybe more importantly, the beer truck better deliver, to the stores. All of that's very important, right? People don't want the disruption in their business. So, a more reliable fleet looks better. The whole, appearances mean a lot, right? You're running a good fleet. You don't see the stuff sitting on the side of the road, broken down. It's good, right? And the data driving that can make a difference, and ultimately lead to savings that aren't just that we're seeing in the fleet maintenance side, but for the operation as a whole, whatever that might be. So the future is kind of exciting with all the new stuff that's coming, and I look forward to embracing it and watching the manufacturers really adopt this. So that's the end of the presentation. We have a little bit of time for questions, and I'm going to pass this back over. Hi, Alex.
All right. Well, thank you both for that great presentation. As John said, we're about to begin the Q&A portion of the webinar. So if you've got questions, please do send them in. But before we do that, I do want to ask everyone to complete our survey. As a special incentive to complete the survey, we are offering a $10 Amazon gift card to 25 randomly selected people who complete the survey today. That survey should be appearing in the middle of your screen shortly. If you don't see it, you can launch it by going to the black toolbar on the left of your screen and clicking the survey icon. All right, so with that, we are going to get to questions. And the first one we have here from an audience member, this person said, I'm somewhat confused about the primary code 25 and the one you're referring to. Could you please clarify it for me?
Okay. Want me to take it, John?
Sure, go ahead, Maggie.
So VMRS codes are the maintenance code section is 3 characters for the system, 3 characters called for the subsystem or assembly is what it's called, and then 3 characters that defines the component of that subsystem assembly to the system. So the 045 that John was talking about is the code, the system code, and under that you have now the new codes that are in as an assembly. When they use those on the fleet systems, then you can drill down to that level. You can start seeing the detail, and you can see where the problems are, and everybody codes it the same way. Hopefully that helped. John, do you want to put anything else in there?
It is a change in the VMRS structure, whereas the engine 045 power plant code, right, had just things like, all the pieces that make up the engine, the valves or the, whatever the assembly was. So maybe the assembly is the head or the engine or something, right? What TMC did to be able to not have to totally create a new piece is these letter codes are just in addition. So when you see these codes in there that start now with a letter, we know those are things that we need to take action on. That's kind of the easiest way to understand that. So in our case, we got them ready to go for anybody that wants to use them. So.
All right, well, thanks for addressing that. We're going to move on to our next question. This person asks, can I start using this new code now, or do I need to wait until 2027 trucks are available? And is it more specific to trucks than cars and heavy equipment?
Well, I will say this. First off, no, you don't have to wait. The codes are there and they're ready to go. At least in our system, I know of one other company out there that at least participated, so I take it that they'll probably get it in theirs. But so they have to exist first. But you can use them. In our case, customers can use them effective today or last year when we implemented them. I do think that the heavy trucks, heavy duty stuff, trucks, buses, things like that, they're the earlier adopters of this. But they always have been with some of the diagnostic trouble codes and things that we look at for doing this. So I do think they're going to be the earlier adopters. There's nothing keeping the car and truck people from doing it. It's just that, remember, the TMC has led this before TMC is what I think this is what their 70th year coming up. But when the VMRS started, like in '69, people knew them as the American Trucking Association codes. And bus people didn't care about it. Construction people didn't care about it. Waste people didn't care. But in 2000, when they went to VMRS, Vehicle Maintenance Reporting Standards, it encompassed all the other verticals. So there's stuff for the waste truck, the stuff for the buses, the concrete, and conveyor belt systems and tracks on, yellow iron, like, a bulldozer. All of that's there now. All of the car codes, auto codes, all that stuff is all in there. It's just that it's been more adopted. So to be fair, my guess is that those manufacturers that I threw up on the screen, those plus those two engine manufacturing companies, and some of them do have their own engines as well, right? So it encompasses several. I think those are the ones that are going to implement it first. So I think it'll be a while before the car people adopt them. Car and light truck, I should say.
All right. Well, thank you. Reminder to the audience, if you got questions, send them in. We are going to move on to the next question here. This one says, our company has not embraced using smartphones on the shop floor. Can you give me some justifications to share with them?
Maggie, I'll let you follow it after I make my statement where I was wrong earlier when I said I really thought people were going to go for the tablet. As a matter of fact, Alex, I got my whole team not just regular tablets, which they always have for deployment, but I also got them laptops that turned into tablets. Well, that wasn't the greatest thing. It was a mistake on my part, because what we found out was that, go with the average technician age, right? Most of them have had a phone, and that's, substantial, right? They've always had a phone. They know it. And even, it doesn't have to be just young people. Almost everybody's got a phone in their hand now, right? That's really the what they want to use. Right. Not that the tablets aren't great. I think the tablets have their place when you're doing your checklist. Maybe you're down in a pit or underneath of a lift or whatever, and it might just be a little easier. But the phone's got the data there. It's got what you previously done. It's very comfortable to people. But Maggie, your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think that the phone works best for the mechanic on the floor, or especially for a mechanic that's in a mobile truck going out to service someone. He's got it right there. He sees exactly what's going on. He can see the history. He can input that data very, very quickly. He can say, yes, I'm working on this. Oh, guess what? Not only did I have a flat tire, but I have a light out, and he can immediately add that task to that work order and be able to put that in instead of writing it on a big chief tablet with a big fat pencil, or the one that they always put in their pockets, John.
Yeah.
Right. And then come back and write it up later. I do also agree that the phone is where most people are most comfortable. They do sometimes have an issue, though, that it's perceived that the mechanics are out there watching YouTube. Well, that's just something that you have to work with them and say, hey, this is a tool I have. Use it properly when you're on the shop floor. But I would absolutely agree. It's easier from the phones, and they can use both Android and iPhone. They both work very, very well.
You made me laugh, Maggie. You said he for the mechanic, and here you were on the women in trucking. I often we've been a big supporter of the TMC and the Super Tech competition, and we send judges from our company every year to support that. And once again this year, I stepped back into that role. There was a record number of women that are professional technicians out there, and I was very impressed with their work in the skills section that I judged. So anyway, our world is changing, right? Some of it's becoming more complicated, out there. So,
and we are working at Women in Trucking to include the female technicians and the female parts people. That's the progression. And so yay for TMC, and thank you for bringing that up, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Let's go to the next question. We got time for a couple more here. This question is, my fleet system only used the primary system VMRS code. How would I change it to allow for the second level assembly code?
So I can't speak for all the systems out there, right? I know some of them. What a lot of people used to do, it's always been a 9-digit concoction since 2000, let's say, okay? So it's the system, 3 characters, right? The assembly, another 3, and then the component. And like in our classic system, you had the ability to suppress the component and the assembly and just use the main code, like 013 for brakes or 017 for tires. In the background, it did record all of that other numbers. It just used the zeros to do it, right? So there are fleets that's all they were able to do. But the problem is that's not enough nowadays, really, and a good system and a good implementation of the VMRS, it makes it very easy because you can tailor it down to your operation so that there's nobody in the world wants to see all, however many it is, 36,000 codes, right? It's overwhelming. But you should be able to pick something like, okay, I'm doing the brakes, I'm doing the front brakes, and I'm going to replace the slack adjuster, right? So it should only show you the components of the assembly of front brakes that are there, right? Or whatever it might be. And that needs to be made very easy for people. Yes, it takes time to set up and to make things inactive. So if you don't have any hydrovac brakes anymore, there's no point in having that assembly available for people to pick from, right? Or whatever it might be. Most all of the systems have some ability to do that. You just want to make sure that you've got a system that does update the codes, because TMC does update them. They're actually updated every single month, but that can be a little bit overwhelming, right? And it may add 1 or 2 things here or there. Usually they're adding manufacturers, the supplier manufacturers, or they're adding a component or something like that. But it is a living, breathing thing, and they're constantly changing it.
Okay, thank you, John. Let's go to another question. We've got a little bit more time. This question is, how would I implement dynamic, predictive, and prognostic maintenance in my shops? Would this mean more checklists and schedules?
I'll let you run with that one, Maggie.
I don't know that there will be more checklists. They will be different, and you might update your checklist. And the predictive things and the diagnostics, that's coming in automatically. That's a Maggie word, folks. That comes in automatically from the sensors on the trucks in the 2027 and going on. That'll come in at that point. You can look at what you have for your coding, the VMRS coding, and start getting consistency in more detail so that you can look at predicting things in the interim. If you want to have additional checklists, you certainly can. There's nothing to stop that. You can call it a PMA if you're doing an LOF, right? Or you can say, I'm going to predict based on what I know today that we need to review the engine after this many hours. So it's really how you want to set up all the different schedules, and don't overwhelm your staff. Just figure out what it is that you see that you need to work on and create a new checklist if you need. Otherwise, expand the ones you have.
Ooh.
Okay. Thanks, Maggie. I like that. I like that word, automatically.
Thank you.
Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour, so I think that will wrap up the Q&A portion of the session here. Before we go, I'd like to remind our audience that we will have a recording of this webinar available on the Fleet Equipment website, and by email, you'll receive one tomorrow with a link to the recording. You can log in to view it again. You can send it to colleagues for them to view it. And that is going to conclude our webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a good day.
Thank you for coming.